Everyone, welcome to our first National Academy of Construction Ask Me Anything for our fall 2022 semester. My name's Keith Molenaar, and I'm an NAC member and Dean of the College of Engineering and Applied Science at the University of Colorado Boulder. Welcome. So glad you joined us today. The National Academy of Construction was established to recognize our industry leaders. An important purpose of the Academy is to provide a network system of linkages between the past and present participants of the construction industry. As such, we've established this NAC AMA to help transfer the knowledge to our next generation of construction leaders, which is you. Again, thank you for joining us. So our format is simple. Our speaker will make a short presentation on a topic and their perspective in the industry. If you've not already, it's important, please email your questions to nacama@colorado.edu. I'll put that in the chat here in a moment, but they need to come in via email at nacama@colorado.edu. And at the end of this, one of our participants will win a $500 scholarship towards your education. So please do get those questions in. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Greg Kelly. Greg is the President and Chief Executive Officer of STV, and he's responsible for overseeing the workforce of over 2,200 employees and guiding the firm towards achieving its short-term and long-term strategic goals with an emphasis on performance, business development, technology, and human capital. STC is a leader in providing architectural, engineering, planning, environmental, and program and construction management services for all types of sectors here, the transportation systems, infrastructure, building, energy, and other facilities. Greg was previously Chief Executive Officer of Heritage Construction and Materials, a leading provider of services in asphalt products, aggregate supply, and road building construction. Prior to that, he was a member of WSP's global executive team and CEO of the U.S. operations, providing professional services across transport, property and buildings, water, energy, and the environment. Greg has degrees from Temple University and the New Jersey Institute of Technology, and he's a registered professional engineer in several states. Greg, thank you so much for sharing your time with us tonight, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Well, thank you, Keith. I appreciate the introduction and grateful for your work in organizing these sessions. I was commenting to somebody earlier today, I wish these kinds of sessions existed when I was doing my undergraduate studies, because it certainly would have just helped orient from somebody who had more experience, just help orient yourself in your career. So I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight and engaging with the students who have joined us. So just a little bit about myself. That's not necessarily in the bio that Keith read. Grew up on the East Coast, outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was the middle of 5 kids. We didn't have a lot growing up, but we certainly had enough, and a lot of love and a great family. It's still very close to the family today. Myself, I'm married close to 40 years. I also have a family of 5 children. None of them have gone into engineering, but all make me and my wife very proud of how they've become good citizens and members of the community. So, as Keith mentioned, I'm with STV, and we're a professional services firm. You've heard from different types of folks. If you participated in these sessions in the past, it may have been contractors or from academia or owners. I've done a little bit of all of that in my career. And that's kind of what prepared me for the assignment I have today with STV. But I thought what we would do is I wanted to just share a topic that's very relevant to the engineering profession today. In fact, it's relevant to all of our communities, not just engineers and people aspiring to be engineers. And it's the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And Keith, if I could prevail upon you to just pull the presentation up. And I'll begin to talk about why this is important. The IIJA, as it's known, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, thank you, Keith, is a $1.2 trillion for transportation and infrastructure spending, with $550 billion of that figure going toward new investments and programs. This was an act that was passed just about a year ago. And it's one of the signature pieces of legislation to come out of Washington in quite some time. What's impressive is the funding for the IIJA is expansive in its reach. It addresses energy and power infrastructure, access to broadband internet, water infrastructure, and more. So really what you begin to see in this act, unlike previous sources of funding for public infrastructure, is beginning to merge some of these different infrastructure systems together. It's transformational for the US. Keith, if you'd be kind enough to move to the next slide. And so this begins to look at where the funding will be spent. Okay, and this is a plan that is going to touch all parts of the US. It's the largest increase in federal highway, bridge, and transit funding in more than 6 decades. So when I use the word generational, it's real. This is something that I know I've never seen in my career. And it's that generational chance for us to repair and modernize the systems that we all rely on. Now, I like to say that, the systems we use, whether they're the pipes and pumps that bring us clean water, or the roads and bridges that allow us to move from point A to point B, or the airports that allow us to travel long distances, they were conceived, planned, designed, and built by our parents and their parents and their parents. And the work we do in our profession is for our children and their children and their children. It truly is transformational. And beyond that, there's near-term economic benefits for communities that will be involved and have these projects built around them. So, Keith, if you could just move to the next slide there. I just want to talk a little bit about the significance of this IIJA. Okay, again, you have to go back 60 years to understand the significance of this. And it's unprecedented. And it's the largest investment in public transit, passenger rail, since the creation of Amtrak, which was 50 years ago. It's the largest investment in bridge investments since the construction of the interstate highway system, which goes back to the 50s and 60s, and clean drinking water and wastewater infrastructure, and clean energy transmission, and preparing for electric vehicle infrastructure. So really what we're doing is laying that foundation for future generations, which really give us the opportunity to grow and build resilient communities. And and what's baked into this act, which is again transformational, is trying to enhance social equity and intergenerational wealth. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So again, there's no shortage of significance to what's being proposed here. The other thing that I would say is that, for the first time in the history, the federal government has made it a goal that the benefits of these federal investments are going to move towards disadvantaged communities, whether it's looking at highways that cut off communities that were built 50, 60 years ago that cut off communities, and looking at alternatives to restore those neighborhoods as part of it. And those are neighborhoods that are marginalized or perhaps underserved by transportation. Because if you think about the transportation aspect of this act, transportation is a key to upward mobility, to economic mobility. Think of yourself if you had a job, but you didn't have a way to get to that job. You didn't have a car or a transit system. Sure, you might take an Uber, but you might not be able to afford an Uber, right? So it's really a way for economic mobility. And so when you look at these underserved communities, it's really providing a way for them to have access to jobs and to good healthcare and to schools. So one of the things we've done here at STV that's really important to us and to me personally is our commitment to partner with our clients and communities to help meet this need as part of the act. And Keith, if you could move to the next slide, please. We are partnering with a number of agencies out there in something called the Equity Infrastructure Partnership. Now, I want you to think about just the IIJA and the jobs aspect of this act. It will create an estimated 15 million jobs. 8 million of those jobs are for workers without a high school diploma. 4.8 million of those jobs are for workers with more than a high school diploma. And over 2 million of those jobs are for workers with bachelor degrees and above, folks like I'm speaking with today. And those jobs will be scattered across the US. Take advantage of this. And so when you think about that impact, you say, well, how does this translate into equity in the communities? Well, one of the things we've done, has been done, is the Equity Infrastructure Partnership was founded by Keith, the DIA Airport CEO, Phil Washington, and former U.S. Deputy Secretary of Transportation, John Picari, and others in anticipation of this spending on the Jobs Act. And the idea was to answer President Biden's call to leverage infrastructure spending to build wealth in underserved communities. So in other words, it's not just about doing the work that needs to be done, but it's about doing good work. And it's creating a generational opportunity to align with the generational nature of infrastructure, whether it's clean water or mobility that we've been talking about. So this Equity Infrastructure Project, or EIP as we call it, the goal exists to improve public contracting practices, to create more prime or joint venture or equity contracting opportunities for historically underutilized businesses, also known as hubs, with the ultimate goal of reducing the racial wealth gap. Through the pledge, the EIP works to secure commitments from public agencies, some which are shown here, to increase the number and size and scope of contracts going to these historically underutilized businesses by facilitating access and reducing barriers to competing for business. Keith, would you move to the next slide? One of the things we've done here at STV is we've signed up for this pledge because we're committed to working with our clients, some of which you saw in the earlier slide, and working with our industry partners to deliver more equitable infrastructure projects in the future. The public sector has a tremendous role in driving equity infrastructure, but that doesn't mean private sector folks like ourselves here at STV have to sit on the sidelines. We believe our industry can seize this moment of generational investment to create the generational wealth, those who may have historically been left out. So Keith, if you move to the next slide. Okay, and then these are some of the activities. We're looking to streamline administrative processes for these hubs. We're looking to, support and back policy reforms that help build generational wealth, and to promote, educate, and connect clients with industry peers regarding the Equity Infrastructure Project. And I believe I have one more slide. Okay, and this is just an example of some of things we're doing in STV to create a database of where these historically underutilized businesses exist, so we can make those connections and literally connect those dots to create opportunity for generational wealth. So why did I pick this topic? Why this group? Let me ask me anything. All of you are in your studies now, wherever you are in your engineering studies right now, will be working on some aspect of the Infrastructure Jobs Act. It's going to be there. This is going to go on for 5 to 10 years. I like to say here at STV, when we were selecting our interns last summer, I said they're interns that took their first semester exams in their dorm rooms. This is last December. That will be project managers on projects that will be delivered with the funding from this act. It's our job to look for opportunities to bring them into their workforce, accelerate their learning, help them achieve their credentials, and prepare them to lead in the infrastructure space. And I think that's what, Keith, that's why I'm delighted, that the National Academy of Construction has taken this on, because I see these types of dialogues as opportunities to help folks see where there might be a career path and give them the optimism that they're doing not only chosen well in terms of a major, but have chosen well because they can make a real impact on the community.
Greg, thank you for that really informative and inspirational presentation there. I think you really wove in a lot of the past and how it's, launching us towards the future. I also think it's a wonderful introduction to our theme for the fall, which is bridge builders, talking about infrastructure, but also talking about bridging the wealth gap and just for all society as well. So I'm going to jump right into the questions. I'm going to start with one, just a personal one from Cassidy. You are very passionate, we can tell there, about infrastructure. So how did that passion, where did you discover that passion for infrastructure, and how is it still motivating you today?
Okay. Well, Cassidy, I am passionate about it because, and I'll tell you the story of when it happened. I was probably 4 to 5 years into my career. My first job out of college was a great job. I worked in industry. I worked for Bethlehem Steel, and they had a great management program, and I learned a lot. I really did, but it wasn't inspiring me. It wasn't, I don't know what it was, but I just didn't feel inspired. So I made a job change for personal reasons, and I joined a firm that I really built my career with. It was back in Philadelphia, and we were building a tunnel. We're building a tunnel to connect 2 independent railroads, the Reading Railroad and the old Penn Central Railroad. They were about a mile apart. One served the region to the north, and the other one served the region to the west. And this tunnel came through, and as an engineer, we were underpinning historic structures. It had rail systems. It had all the things that I said, this is why I went into engineering. This was really great fun. I had great mentors that taught me about construction, and it was wonderful. But I was into about 5 years, and I realized this is more than a tunnel, because we were getting towards the end of the project, and I realized what this tunnel was going to do. It was going to connect a disconnected region. It was going to give people, 40 miles north one way or 40 miles west another way, access to jobs, to education, to healthcare, give them opportunities to live in different places. And I began to understand the real economic benefit of what we do. And it was at that moment I realized, I was fortunate enough to choose a really good course of study that opened that door for me to see that what infrastructure projects can do. They can do amazing things. And you can point to projects in your own community. And if you step back and say, why did we do that? Like, why was that project done? Sure, it was maybe a state of good repair project to keep an asset going. But if you think about why that asset, the water line was put in, the roadway was put in, the school was built, when you think about social infrastructure, it's usually to fill an economic need. It was to raise the tide for everybody. And so it was that project back in the early part of my career. I was probably under 10 years, and it all kind of came together for me. I was too busy, working on my PE and doing all the other things, just trying to be a good engineer. And then I realized there's more to this than the engineering. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And I see how it relates to your presentation today as well, and what you're still working on there. I'm going to combine 2 questions here because they're kind of related, one from Santos and one from Max. Santos, we wanted you to reflect a little bit on what's the biggest improvements that you've seen in the industry through your career. And then Max was wondering, what are the things that are going to change in the coming years? What's your vision for what you see improving?
Okay. Well, thank you both. I'd say biggest improvements have probably been around how projects get built. And I'm not talking about necessarily the physical building, because technology, I think, has really kind of accelerated in the construction space. But I would say that the collaboration aspect on projects has really dramatically taken off throughout my career. Things, tended to be a little bit more siloed the early part of my career. But I think what all have realized now is, there's projects are built by teams, and you have to have a very collaborative approach in how projects get done. And so I see more partnering between owners who are sponsors for projects, whether they're private owners or public owners, engineers, planners, architects who are, or actually create the solution and how it might get built, and then the contractors who build it. I see a lot more collaboration. In terms of Max's question, in terms of what's going to change in the future, well, I'd like to say I got a great crystal ball, but I'll put a couple of ideas out there that I think that are going to continue to change. And I think the cohort on this call are going to play a pivotal role in. I think technology as an enabler in terms of how we understand projects and project risks is going to accelerate. I think that collaboration I was talking about in response to Santos's question, I think is going to continue. So you'll see new kinds of contract relationships and how teams come together to deliver projects. I think you'll see, with this Infrastructure and Jobs Act, you'll see more of a focus on the benefits to the communities. I think that will be top of mind. So whether it's the sustainability piece of it, mitigating impacts in communities and improving, the quality of lives for people in the communities. I think you'll see a lot more of that go into the planning on projects. I think you're going to see more on the technology front as well on the construction side. There's a lot of, when you think about autonomous vehicles as an example, I think you're going to see more of that in the construction of projects. It's amazing some of the things that are being done regarding safety on jobs, where you've got, wearable devices that can alert you right away to an unsafe condition, or if somebody does, if there is an incident. So I think the technology is going to keep our workforce a bit safer going forward, which I think is a really important element. There's experimentation right out there right now with exoskeletal suits to keep the body cool, and so workers can be more productive. So there's a lot of technology coming to space. I can't tell you exactly how it's all going to play out, but I see an industry that's more open to technology, where maybe that wasn't the case in the early part of my career. It was always like, how have we done things in the past? I think there's a rapid change right now. I will say that one of the things I think we have to be prepared for is, having the workforce to execute and deliver projects. That's something we talk a lot about in business. And while I don't think anybody has the answer, we're all, like good construction and engineers, we're piloting a lot of things, how to recruit and retain a workforce to deliver critical infrastructure projects that are necessary, that we all benefit from. Most people don't stop to think about, but those that are in the course of study are thinking about it. So I think we're in that experimentation phase right now in terms of how to draw more to the field and to keep them in the field, make it more interesting.
Great insights there. Thank you. Let me just, one more question along that theme. Paige was asking about emerging technologies. You've hit a number of them, but where do you see emerging technologies specifically on the design side, such as use of virtual reality or visualization tools? Anything you'd comment on there that our participants should be preparing themselves for?
Absolutely. It's here. There have been visualization tools in play for at least a decade or more. And I would say different vertical markets in the engineering and construction architecture space are a little bit more advanced than others. You see it a lot more in the building space. You're seeing a lot more of it in the infrastructure space right now. So I would say become conversant with those kinds of technologies that are out there, and come prepared to help bring it into the workforce, because there's folks in the workforce today that are leading organizations. We need to look to the next generation to help with the deployment of the technologies. There's an expression, I think it's called digital natives. I think, the cohort that's coming through right now with the undergraduate education in engineering, like those on the phone, you grew up with technology. There's a whole generation in front of you. It came a little bit later. So everybody's at different stages of development. But I would say that everything we do is ripe for innovation and deployment of technology. Anything that's repeatable is ripe for some sort of technology play. One of the things we're doing here at STV is we're helping a lot of our clients with that transformation, digital transformation, how they're thinking about projects, whether it's, 3, 4, 5D, the visualization, the paperless projects. I mean, you used to have rolls of plans. There are opportunities for paperless projects out there. Everything's on an iPad. You can program your equipment to execute certain tasks. It's happening very rapidly. So I really believe there's a whole course of study there, Keith, that really needs a lot of focus as we think about accelerating that technology curve. I had a friend that once said that our industry has not been a hotbed of innovation, and the analogy he used was, heck, we're still using the same recipe for concrete that the Romans came up with. And I always remember that. A little sand, a little cement, some stone. It still works. I mean, still the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world is the Pantheon in Rome, right? Still there today with a hole in the middle, and some brilliant engineers. But I think we've come around. I think we've come a long way, and I think part of that's demographic. And just technology is in our daily lives, so it's naturally going to flow into our professional lives as well.
Outstanding. Appreciate that answer. I'm going to ask a question, just expanding on the IIJA a little bit. Let's see, it's Matthew's asking about how the legislation for greener transportation, how's it tangibly changing the way that you design and build infrastructure?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Matthew. Look, I think what the Infrastructure Act did was try to codify and move states and municipalities to be thinking more long-term about the impact of a project. And so there will be lots of opportunities in the delivery of projects under this act to think about the environmental impacts of the construction and of the project. So whether it's from a resiliency perspective and building that into the asset and how it gets built, to the types of materials that are used that are low impact on the environment. What will happen? That won't come from the federal level. That experimentation is going to occur at the local level. And so that's where technology will come in. And so you'll see incentives for states and municipalities they're coming through with the money from the federal government to think about, the long-term impact of the project on a community. So in terms of greener transportation, low fuel equipment, electric vehicles is probably the one everybody's talking about now. Where you see the OEMs have moved rapidly and have declared their strategy. We're going to be this percentage of our manufacturing is going to be electric by certain dates. So you've got the big, auto manufacturers creating battery plants to support that growth. You've got states developing their vehicle infrastructure for charging stations and how that will work. So there's a lot of movement underway right now. The question we have to begin to answer is, is the grid there to support that? While moving to electric vehicles is there, it's real. I don't think there's any going back. Have we got everything thought through and thought out and planned out? No, not exactly, but that's part of the profession we're in. We solve problems as we gain more information. We solve those problems. But I think that's probably the signature piece in the years ahead is that move towards electric vehicles. Think about a local community with a school bus fleet. They're going to have to upgrade their infrastructure with charging stations to have those buses run. So it's not just the personal side; it's the communities we live in, and then a lot of our transit agencies are moving to electric vehicles. So it's going to be a cleaner economy, and there's going to be opportunities to think about projects differently. I say to people often, I wish I was where you were, in your career, getting ready to finish your studies and coming into this profession, because this is going to be a period of rapid change because of these sorts of emerging technologies in the space.
Great. Jack's asking a related question. I think you just answered it, but let me just make sure. So he's looking for a job right out of college and interested in what relates to the IIJA. So what type of projects should Jack be looking for? You mentioned some electrification, or what other types of projects do you see having a real impact in his career?
Well, Jack, I'm not sure where you're located, but I would say that the IIJA is going to impact communities across the U.S. So, certainly in the road and bridge building side of things, when you think about heavy infrastructure, there's going to be a significant aspect there. There's going to be a broadband piece. There's going to be electric vehicles, that's going to be part of the investment. And there's going to be your rail and transit investments from the IIJA, along with clean water. So I think I tend to think of infrastructure as those vital life systems, right? We need clean drinking water to live. We need mobility to get to jobs, school, healthcare. We need broadband for communication. It's just part of our daily lives right now. And there's large pieces of the U.S. that don't have that. So think about those critical assets that we use every day. And there's going to be opportunities for you in your career, if you find something that you like, just pursue it.
Thanks. Well, there's a lot more questions around climate crisis and environmental. We spent a lot of time on there. So Tulupe, Carly, and Kavita, thank you for your questions there. I'm going to go a different way, though. This is a really interesting question, Greg. So it's a little long, but I'm interested in your answer here. So Aaron is asking about what we might be losing as we evolve through efficiency. So let me read it. As we continue to optimize and modernize our systems we use in everyday workplace and on projects, have you noticed anything we're losing? For example, are there any skill sets, standards, or information that we're starting to lose, or that we may end up losing if we continue to become more efficient, more technology proficient? It's a great question for people in their careers. What can they focus on, those skill sets?
Yeah. Aaron, I'd like to take that question and ask my leadership team the same question. It is really forward-looking and obviously very thoughtful. The way we work has changed in our profession. I think, well, every profession. And there's a thing called a pandemic that drove that. And we like to say that, the pandemic accelerated trends, ways of working that were already underway, just accelerated it, and everything just moved faster on the timeline. We would have gotten there, but we just got there a lot faster. And whether it's remote working or different tools we make available, what we've seen has happened. What we're losing is that human touch, that interpersonal opportunity to build relationships with people on projects. It's one thing to work if you get your head down, you're working a problem, you're working through calculations, you're working through a design, you're thinking about solutions, and that's a piece of a project, but the project usually has a broader team around it. So, Aaron, I think one of the things I'd worry about losing is developing those teamwork skills that are really necessary to move projects. This is, it rarely is it one person. It's never one person that delivers a project, whether it's infrastructure or high-rise building, whatever it might be. It's a team effort. So I think we have to be mindful of that. And I'm hoping in your undergraduate studies, you're doing that. Your senior projects, you're out working as a team and learning from each other, because that isolation, you lose that opportunity to learn from each other, which I think is really vital. Keith and I were talking earlier about, you know, having the students back on campus, and there's that, with all that friction, there's learning that takes place. And so I think that's something we need to look for. I think the tools don't take away from, you know, you talked about codes or standards. I think that's fine, but you still need to understand the engineering, the physics, the strength of materials, and understand how to deploy tools the right way. But I'm really referring to how the projects get built.
Thank you. So Ariel has a good question. I'm going to ask you. It's just ask you straight out here. Do you see many women working at STV or for other construction related companies? And what do you do as a corporation to make the workplace more inclusive?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I will say that this is a different profession in general than when I started my career. When I graduated from Temple University, I was a civil engineering major. I had one woman in my class, so that gives you an idea of the time frame. I will tell you, and I know this because I was looking at it this morning, 30% of our employee population in STV are women. But I would say in construction, I've also seen a change in terms of number of women leaders that are working in construction. And some of my professional colleagues that I go to for advice and whatnot are women. I saw one today earlier that I had done a project with 25 years ago. She's actually working at the University of Pennsylvania right now in the architecture school. What I would say is, like you asked specifically, what are we doing here at STV? Well, about a year and a half ago, it's coming up on 2 years, we formed a DEI council, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we formed this council to provide advice to senior leadership like myself in the firm around being more diverse, being more inclusive. And that this is a group of about 16 people in a firm of about 2,500 right now that has really given me some solid advice about how to pay attention to the things that really matter. And so we've looked at everything from policies to hiring practices. And I'm proud to say that, you know, we have made good progress, but you're never done. You never get in this profession, you never get complacent. In business, you never get complacent. You don't accept excuses. You find solutions, and that's one of the things we've done here at STV is we've done a pretty good job in diversifying our leadership team. But that was with intention, and I think for leaders in firms and companies and leaders in the industry, you have to do that with intention. I've been fortunate to participate in a lot of industry associations. One of them was the Salvadori Center, where we brought STEM education to New York City youth. And we had, you know, thousands of students we would touch each year with helping them understand the built environment around them, like why tall buildings stand up, you know, why buildings are designed a certain way or roads are designed a certain way. It was very impactful, and we use that. You know, the number of us in our profession use those opportunities to create, you know, a passion, to light that interest in the brain around pursuing a career that obviously we all feel really passionate about. So it starts early. It starts at school level, whether it's Salvadori or the ACE Mentor program, which we've been very active in, or our own DEI council, and then being very intentional in how we try to identify and promote people. Because we're a business. Like, we're in the business of providing a professional service. We don't build, but we advise clients on how to plan, help them plan and engineer and design and get built different projects. We need to reflect our clients. And so there's really just a simple business imperative. It's getting better. You know, but we have to be really honest. Construction is a hard business. You know, it's dirty. The hours are long. It's hard work. And so, convincing people to go into it, has its challenges, but I would not look at it as discouraging. Here's one of the great things about the career you're thinking about right now. It's you have the opportunity to drive through a community and point at different projects you had a hand in delivering. You may have designed an aspect of it. You may have helped build it. You may have been the builder. You don't know where your career is going to take you, but there is such emotional capital from that. And it's beyond a paycheck. If you want to go into a career and make a lot of money, go to Wall Street. It's good. You'll probably do really well. But if you want to do good and be proud and still make a really good living, this is a great career. So, I think being inclusive and opening up, open up your aperture and how you look at, the resources is really important. So I'm pleased where we are at STV, but again, we never get complacent.
Great. Thank you for the candid and comprehensive answer. I really appreciate it. We're starting to wind down on time a little bit here. We have 80 attendees, so obviously we can't get to all of the questions. But I want to wrap up with some kind of nuts and bolts questions. A lot of our participants are getting ready to enter the workforce, so they have a couple questions to help them do that. And then in the next 5 to 10 minutes here, we'll also wrap up and announce our scholarship winner. But Ryan's asking, what's the best way to prepare for an interview for a job or an internship?
Okay. Well, fortunately, there's no shortage of information out there on any company or anybody you're going to be interviewing with. I could tell you a story of my interview on that tunnel project, but we'll save that for another day, Keith. But it was a classic, but today you know so much. There's just so much information out there. So understand the person you'll be meeting with, understand the company's mission, what it does, be curious, be really curious, and then be prepared. Ask good questions. And good questions are, understand the interviewer, understand their career journey, show an interest, show a passion. That's what we look for. If there was one attribute, it would be curiosity. It's don't tell me what to do. Tell me what you do. Like, help me understand this. And so be curious, be passionate. And that's, I don't want to say that's easy, but if it looks like a good internship, let them know you'll come in there and you'll work very hard and be a good team player, and just show up on time and show up prepared. That would be my best advice, Ryan.
That's outstanding advice, really. That curiosity, the ability to engage, and I think you as interviewees want to learn about the company as well, right? What's their culture, and the best way to do that is through a dialogue, a curiosity. So I really appreciate that answer. Let's see, Ryan's thinking about getting a master's degree and noticed that you had one. So do you recommend getting a master's for this industry? And if so, is it smart to do it right away or wait?
All right, full disclosure, I waited. And that was just, I don't know why. But, I think it's all situational. It depends on your financial situation. It depends on your drive at this point in time. If you're not sure what you want to do and you think it might be, let me pursue a master's in some specialty area, and you have the ability to do that, sure, I think you should go for it. I would encourage everybody to pursue an advanced degree at the appropriate time. It just shows to a potential employer, shows a seriousness of purpose, shows an intellectual curiosity. It's just another benchmark for the candidate coming through the door, and it'll help you build your network. And you'll learn maybe what you like to do, maybe of less interest to you. But at the same time, you don't have to do it right away. You might want to do it at night. That was the path I took. It is really situational, but I would encourage you to pursue it. That and any other credential that's going to be part of your career.
All right, to try and get 2 more questions in, I'm going to combine them for you here. So, one is from Kayla, and she wants to know, what was the most difficult thing you had to learn during your career? So Kayla wants to know the most difficult. And then Joseph wants to know what you know now that you wish you would have known while you were in their seat.
Oh, okay. Well, what advice would I give a younger version of myself? All right, Kayla, let's do you a difficult piece. What was the most difficult thing I had to learn? I think it was probably patience. Early part of my career, I was probably not as patient as I needed to be. I don't know what it was, you just kind of you go, and I was always go, go, go. And I sometimes wish I took the time earlier in my career to just fully appreciate what was happening around me. I was curious. I was always, always trying to do the next thing. And I think, that it kind of ties, Joseph, to your question. I think the advice I would give is, take the time and build those relationships. I've been very blessed. This much I'll say about our profession. It is unbelievably supportive. As big as this industry is, and it's a big part of the economy in the U.S., I've been fortunate enough over my career to have an amazing set of colleagues and relationships and a network out there that is just phenomenal. And people I could call up and say, I'm struggling with an issue here, I'm looking for perspective. And it's just so giving and generous, this whole profession. It really, I think it's like no other. And I kind of wish I knew that earlier, but I'm really feel good that I've kind of finally figured it out. But that would be the advice. And the other thing I would say is, you don't know what's going to come towards you. I had a mentor early in my career. He was a phenomenal individual. His name was Jim Lammy, and he said, your career is a series of random events. Jim also was a member of the National Academy of Construction. I'll never forget that. Where there's these opportunities that open up, just be open to them. And there's no perfect job. Just say, I'm going to be learning every day. I don't know what is it I'm going to learn, but I'm going to learn every day. And I think life gets more interesting.
Greg, those are outstanding comments to finish out. And unfortunately, that's our last question with the time we have. But do you have any other final thoughts that you'd like to share before I close things out?
Sure. Well, one, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. But I guess closing thought I might have, Keith, is it takes a while as you finish your studies and move into your career to figure out what you're really passionate about. You might know now, and it's great, but it might change too. And it also takes a while to figure out what you're good at. And that's part of going to school. School's about exploration. You're learning new things. You're learning about yourself. You're challenging yourself. You've selected what I think arguably is, one of the most challenging undergraduate majors in engineering. I really believe that. And so you're going to be good at that. You're going to get through it. But if you can figure out what you're good at and what you're passionate about, and you can get those two lines to intersect, then you're really blessed. So I would encourage you to keep an open mind. Try different things, explore, build relationships. And it can just be a heck of a lot of fun.
Greg, thank you so much. That's just great thoughts, and I'm really appreciate hearing them myself. So I know our participants have. And so I'm just going to close out with some thank yous here. First, thanks to everybody attending. You asked wonderful questions, and we had a great conversation because you did that. So thank you for attending. I want to be sure to thank Sandy Pittman for putting all the details together and making this happen. So thank you, Sandy. And then I want to thank Wayne Crew and all of the members of the National Academy of Construction. It's their desire to share their experience with you, our next generation of leaders. And fortunately, they also share some of the earnings of their careers and have donated the money that make these scholarships possible. So we've randomly drawn our winner, and it is Ryan Flattery from Clarkston University. So Ryan, congratulations. We'll be in touch with you via the email that you sent to get a little bio from you from our webpage and get you the support for your education. So Thank you all for attending, and especially Greg, thank you for the time tonight. We really do appreciate it.